You're like,
This is Senate Transportation, and we are resuming our testimony. And we have Jeremy Reed from the Transportation Agency, and go.
Thank you. Jeremy Reed, Chief Engineer, Agency Transportation, and here today to discuss project sequencing and prioritization and give a bit of a outlook of where we stand moving forward as far as how many projects are in the program and kind of the current financial capabilities. So it's a multi-layered process. One is to get a project into the program, and then once it's in the program, as we build the annual budget and the white book, how do we prioritize what projects advance to construction on any given year? So I know you've all heard about VPSP2, so this will be high level on that front, and then we'll get a little bit deeper into the weeds as far as the sequencing and prioritization piece. So VPSP2 is a vision that is a performance-based, data-driven project selection and prioritization process that maximizes the transportation value of any given project. And through that process, it brings them into the program. The RPCs have a role in this, along with other, quantifiable criteria that we use.
can we do questions
Sure.
as you go along? Are you good? So when you say the RPCs, that's the tax, right?
Correct.
And do all of the RPCs have a tax? Transportation?
I believe so. Yeah.
Okay, cool. All right.
Yeah. So within the VPSP2 scoring criteria, here's how the various pieces are weighted. And again, it's been a couple years, but as projects get suggested, this is what it's rated. They're given a score, and then those are then brought into the program.
Just another just health access is just 5 points, and I just want to note that because we've been working a lot on health access.
So then once a project comes into the program, obviously every project has a different development cycle. So that scoring or weighting doesn't carry through because basically the deck gets shuffled as a project goes through its development. So then in September, August, we start building the following year's budget, and we have to prioritize those projects that are ready. And this is the process in which we do this. And it's a multi-tier system where we go through our list and decide what advances and what doesn't. So tier one, these projects generally all get moved forward. And the criteria to be in tier one is continuity for ongoing or continuation of ongoing construction. Obviously, we're not going to cease funding on a project that's in construction. Likewise, for project awards, if we've already awarded a contract, we're going to continue down that path. Any safety critical needs. So if there's documented crash risk, roadside hazards, imminent failure of a bridge, for example, would rise to that criteria. And then if we have any funding time limitations, those would move forward. So congressionally directed spending, any grant awards that are about to lapse, we obviously move those to the front of the line so that we don't lose funding.
Sorry, on the first slide, I didn't understand before when we talked about VPSP2, I thought it was for all projects, but then I was told it's only for the kind of additional money. But is the goal of the agency to make it for the whole book, which is this is the capital program?
So an argument could be made it's for all projects. Likewise, an argument could be made that it's only for additional money. And the nuance there is if it's an asset condition driven project with some safety nexus, which is kind of what we decide, you'll see the weighting kind of would put that to the front of the list anyway. So both can be true. I mean, where the outside influence weighs in is after we've satisfied mobility, connectivity, safety, and asset condition. Then it's sort of the other piece of it, economic access, resiliency and environment. So, I wouldn't want to say it's exclusive to extra money, because to a large degree, even our project selection, considers safety and asset condition.
In community, that's like the RPCs,
Yeah.
where does that's where that comes in?
Yeah,
Okay, and is there ever something in the book that doesn't get a score?
there are certainly legacy projects
Well,
that,
yeah,
right?
definitely.
But
You could get into the book. And when I say the book, that's the same as what you call the capital program.
correct.
Okay.
So, whether or not we give it an actual score, I don't know that every project gets a score, because like I said, our condition driven safety projects get into the book without being scored. And we just know that because they've got 40 points right off the start, they would prevail.
Okay, but you don't go through the whole thing for everybody.
Right, we don't score every project. If we see a section of roadway that's very poor that we want to pave, we don't go through and assign it a
Or if
specific.
there's like a failure, it would just.
Right, a bridge
Just
failure.
run the list.
Yeah.
So the RPC, the tax are 10% of the total score.
Yeah, I mean, I could come back with the specific criteria. This was meant just to be a high level, but if we want to dig right into the,
Who attributes each of these?
I think it's conversation, right? I mean, resiliency, economic access isn't exclusive our domain. So I think there is a conversation that has to occur.
In the old days, the tax got 20, and it started with that. I'm just trying to figure out, well, who's the decision maker that attributes this?
So to be totally honest, we haven't taken projects in from the RPC since I've been chief engineer, just due to fiscal constraints. But absolutely happy to come back and, dive into exactly how it worked in
Are you asking
2021.
just for the community part, or are you asking about all the scores?
Well, in the total, if my TAC comes up with the list, I always thought that a lot of the list started with the tax and then moved up, but I'm just trying to figure out how it works.
I believe it's a bit of an iterative process where, right, because we generally would know the asset condition. We would
Yeah.
assign some safety value based on crash histories. That's information we generally exclusively have, not necessarily the tax, but the tax can also talk to the communities about resiliency, community health access and things like that.
So one other piece, since the tax have not been encouraged to present their list because of what if an area decides over time that a project over here is more important to them than a project over here, and it has changed over time.
Yep.
Sometimes things happen. I can think of in Morrisville, there's on Bridge Street, there's a lot more apartments than there used to be. How would a local community express the change in our community has facilitated that we aren't the same as we were 4 years ago?
Right. So, I think where you would have to start is as a project develops, there is certain touch points with the agency to a local community. And let's just say you had two basically identical projects moving in sequence. I think at those touch points, the community could express a desire. Can we deprioritize this and put an emphasis on this? That's a fairly unusual circumstance, just given you need two projects of basically the same size with basically the same program, right? You can't swap a paving project for a bridge project, for instance, because the funding comes from different places and we're trying to achieve different objectives. But if you had, I'll just say, two town highway bridges in a community, one started out being prioritized for whatever reason, over time, that became less important to the community. I think the towns could absolutely reach out to us and say, things have changed. We have these two competing bridges. Could you swap this one for that one?
So just getting back to the original scoring process.
Mhm.
Because I remember when that happened, but I wasn't in this position then. Do you know who decided that that is the scoring process? Did the legislature have any say in that?
I'm confident we testified to that end. This is not in statute. This is something that we've developed. There is arcane language that mimics this by and large, but not exactly. But I'm confident that both this committee and upstairs has heard testimony on this and tacitly agreed with it before it was implemented.
Right. But then the tax haven't had any role really for 5 years.
Well, I don't think it's been 5 years. I think it's probably been 3 or 4. But there was 2 or 3 years where we were taking all those projects in. So, and maybe this is your point, it was active for 2 or 3 years, but hasn't for say 3 or 4 years.
Okay.
But the tax are still doing the work, are they not? Like my understanding, but maybe I'm wrong, so I'm not involved as much, but that they are still kind of working through the process of what their priority projects are.
Can I answer that? No, not necessarily. My, when I heard this year that the message was to not prioritize, that alarmed me because to me, when we're in a negative situation and looking at canceling projects, it's even more important to get community input than do projects. But they were told not to, but
By AOT.
by AOT. That's my understanding, but
Well,
some are still providing
yeah.
their priorities, but that's on their
But did AOT tell them
initiative.
not to do projects?
So what we told them is we're not taking in projects through the BPSP2 process. So prioritizing new projects isn't necessarily adding value right now. That being said, I think each TAC operates sort of however they see fit. And I do think some TACs are communicating with their towns, just basically reaffirming existing priorities, seeing if there is any change.
But your comment saying that you're not taking any new projects in through the BPSP2 project confirms what I thought was like, that it's only about new money. But that kind of way the agency sees it.
Well, fair enough. Yeah, I mean, where it would involve outside input, correct?
Yeah. And then, can I ask one more?
Please.
And you could, oh, we got it.
Yeah,
I was like,
I'm phoning a friend here.
Yeah.
And has the agency thought about making BPSP2 part of the matrix that you would use for just scoring all projects?
And again, I think we do, we just don't actually assign a number to it, right? So when we go through what our new projects are, right? Asset condition and safety are the drivers and they have an outsized scoring. So it's not that we have some other arbitrary thing. We use this framework, whether or not we assign a specific dollar or point to it or score to it. We don't go to that level of formality just because we do have asset condition and data driven principles that we use to, program a paving project or a bridge project.
And that is, I assume that there is it all safety and asset condition? Or is there any geographic interest?
To some extent, the geographic interest comes in sort of in that annual sequencing. As far as bringing in new projects at this state, given the sort of fiscal limitations, it's generally about asset condition and maintaining the network we currently have. And that's more about our statewide performance measures and less about geographic distribution or equity.
Okay. And just one last comment in that it seems like maybe you don't do it because of the work involved in running through the whole process to get score every project. But I think it might help the public to know, because I think the perception from some towns or people out there is that there is some arbitrary part. So if it could be shown, no, everything's going through the same rubric, and then, the safety and asset conditions really are the driver, and here's the evidence of that. Might be helpful, but I don't know if the juice is worth the squeeze there or not.
Well, and there's a certain level of right, to actually get a full score would require all that community outreach. And I would just feel hesitant to say, give us your opinion, but the weighting is gonna make it, I won't say irrelevant, but insignificant.
Fair enough.
Michelle Boomhauer, Agency of Transportation. Just want to chime in on a couple of things. The VPSB2 process was a very extensive outreach process with all the regional planning commissions, the MPO, the League of Cities and Towns. There were a variety of stakeholders also, AARP and the usual suspects, local motion, et cetera. Provided a lot of input to this because prior to this, we had been using a very similar process. And each year, we'd send out the list of projects and we would ask for, you remember the 20%, we would ask for the community score and we would take that 20% and then use that in combination with all the other agency data to come up with a list of what's going first, second, and third, which in a time of some availability of resources was a feasible way to do it. So then we adopted the VPSB2. We kind of got into this period of less resource availability. So everything that had already come to us had already been scored at the regional level and was somewhere in the process of moving in the book. And so anything that's in the book has had some level of, unless it's an emergency project or something, has had some level of community input relative to a scoring process, whether it's this new one or the old one we used to use. And right now, there's only enough money to move things around that are already in the book, not enough to have capacity for adding anything new to the book. If we were able to add anything new, then we would send that stuff out for scoring. But the stuff that's in the book is still going to be in there, moving as it moves because of permitting or right of way or, any number of other factors that we have to look at each August when we build the book to understand sort of the readiness of things to move forward. But I think you made a really good point of helping people to understand why their bridge moved from here to there each year. And
So it could be in the book for 10 years and it seems like the new project's getting ahead of this.
Right. And I would say that any of those new projects that might be getting ahead of it are things that had a deterioration factor that caused it to become an emergency versus a new idea.
That's part of the question I got, particularly on the pavement side.
Yes. Yeah.
What they local community weighed in on 4 years ago and today could be absolutely different. I'll give you, and you and I talked about it this morning, the shape of the mountain road going up to Smugs on 108 4 years ago was completely different condition than it is today. And with as many tourists as you've got going up and in the winter when there's 800 employees at the mountain, it creates a whole different level and the amount of weigh-in from the community. With the growth that's happened in Morrisville and with the growth in the industrial parks, there's a line of cars at the roundabout on 15 going into Morrisville now that wasn't there 5 years ago. And the lack of weigh-in from the communities on that is completely different than 4 years ago. So I wonder if, given the projects that are out there in the place that they are, if opening up and letting some way into the community might be a good thing.
Maybe. And I think Michelle's was better at articulating the point. Getting into the book and how it progresses are two different things. And I think as I go through and you see how we make an annual selection, there could be an opportunity there, but a lot of it is non-discretionary. And I guess let's go through that and then we can re-engage that
I would
conversation.
just say to you, between 2020 and today, the amount of housing development that has gone into a community like Morristown, because of that development, and I would say that to you in that I know your previous life when you sat on the Act 250 Commission, the amount of Act 250 permits that single community has outweighs other communities by a lot. So the view of the local TAC, I'm not sure is the same as it was in 2020 or 21.
And I think as we look at our statewide performance measures, to your point, the housing and traffic volume, we consider even without talking to the TAC, right? That's part of our performance measures. So we're not oblivious to those changes, I guess.
I think sometimes when you include them in the discussion, it leads to an understanding. Go ahead, Andy.
One more question about the book. Is there a criteria about putting into the book on the time frame? Like this goes out 5 years, 3 years, how far?
So, I mean, not every project in the book has construction identified period. So, I mean, how far out it goes it could be infinite.
Right. But when you put it in the book, do you have a criteria about like, we're only going to put it in the book if we think it's going to get funded in the next X years?
No.
Why would you put it in there if you don't think it'll get funded in the next 10 years?
Again, there's projects that have been asked to be put in a book that's, basically just E&E projects that, okay, we'll do some scoping work on, but there's no.
Asked by who? What do you mean?
From either an RPC, there's an idea that, a specific legislator may have, right? And they're like, hey, explore something. So we'll do a scoping study perhaps, and that project's in the book, but there's absolutely no funding in it. The Virginia bypass as an example. So it's still in the books. We have no.
And you could take it out of the book. You would just have to do one of those reports.
Yep. Well, and something I just learned last year, we actually can't cancel a project without legislative approval.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
So-
So once it's in the book, it has to cancel. You can't just, it's not one of those 1050 reports. One of those.
Well, yeah, so if we did cancel it, it would show up on the 10G reports,
Right.
but we can't cancel it without your authorization. So by and large, the projects that you see on the 10G that are no longer in the book are completed.
Okay, you just took them off.
Completed or canceled?
Completed. Yeah, we
There's
can't,
completed 10 years and there's canceled 10 years. Isn't there? I thought there was two different criteria of that.
I don't know. I think there is a criteria, but I don't think we can cancel a project
So you
without.
come forward and say like, we're going to cancel these and then next year would be in the report.
That's how it would work, and I'm not aware that we've done that. But in theory, that's how it would work. And I don't know the mechanism of how we come to you and say, these are and honestly, we got a list we're working on. Here are the 25 projects we want to cancel. I don't know the mechanism of how that actually would work, but
Yeah.
I do know to cancel a project, we need your authorization.
Right. Maybe it just gets authorized by accepting the book and it's not in there.
Michelle?
So, if it were that easy, yeah, that would be great.
Yeah.
But no, to take something out of the book, we actually have to bring forward language. We would do it through the T-bill. We would have already worked with the community to make sure that they are on board, because that's the first thing you're all going to ask is, does the town know this? And so they would either be asked to testify or supply a letter indicating, yes, we are not moving forward with this project. We agree that it should come out of the book. And then you can then authorize it to be removed through the T-bill. That's how that would work.
Do you think that putting projects in the book gives some communities a false sense that the project's?
Yes.
Yeah, and I think that's why we have been trying to avoid doing that by only asking for communities to prioritize new projects when we know we will be able to advance things in the book. And I would have to say it's kind of a rare to almost never situation where something gets into the book to be scoped because the legislator thought it was a good idea. Typically, it would be coming from a TAC and a regional planning commission because of some very significant thing that somehow we weren't aware of. That was probably emergency based, or maybe it was safety based. If, there was a big development project that created a safety issue, and they came to us and said, we know you're not accepting projects, but here's the situation here. And then, that might trigger getting into.
That's more the question I would think at this point. I would like to see you ask the tax, has there been changes that should significantly change your point of view in this here's our list, here's what we're doing. Stamp it. Or, and I might not be using the right terms. I don't want them to feel like they're out of the loop.
Understood. Well, I will say one of the things we're attempting to do is the planning team is coming, or has come through highway and is now embedded with our asset management team. And we're really trying to strengthen that conduit, whether it be through some formal process or not. And I'm actually presenting to VAPTA next week, and we're really trying to strengthen those bonds between the RPCs and our asset management team, so that they fully understand the picture. And I think, to your point, Senator, they're not left in the dark.
Oh, go ahead.
Do you see a time where the tax will have input again? Or are we that far behind in our?
So I'll touch on that at the end. Obviously, federal funding is a significant driver here, and I don't know. I will say
Our lack of our own revenues isn't any.
The current funding levels, I will say, do not lend to bringing in additional projects in the near future. But I mean,
Finish your sentence.
I couldn't help myself.
And again, we can dig deeper, because I do have 3 significant programs and showing where the program stands today at current funding levels. So now the project's in the book, we're building the budget for a given year. Tier 1, these are projects that are going to move forward. And I've gone through those criteria. Tier 2 projects, and this is the most likely scenario, asset and cost considerations. So if a project is managed by a neighboring state, obviously we've made that commitment. Brattleboro and Sale as an example. We're not going to pull funding for something that's going forward. Critical asset condition, again, if a bridge is about to be closed or significantly reduced, we want to try to avoid that at all costs. And then if the cost would increase significantly because of deferred projects. So if it's a rehabilitation project, if we don't do it now, we've lost that window to do that rehabilitation, and a replacement cost will be significantly higher. Those are the types of considerations for these tier 2 projects. Tier 3, and this is where, generally speaking, there's some level of discretion, is dependency projects. So if there is a project that is adjacent to another project, so Burlington-Winooski right now in the Diverging Diamond, they can't happen concurrently. So we are in a position where the Diverging Diamond had to go when the Diverging Diamond happened, so that the Burlington-Winooski project would not be adversely affected. Things like that are considered. Network-wide performance, again, these are the things I've discussed here, either bridge or pavement condition. We try to use those asset management principles to select the right projects so that our state performance and federal performance measures are in line with what we expect. And federal maximization. So this is the 80-20 versus 90-10 versus 100% piece. And so this is kind of the last piece of the Tetris puzzle of, project A has a 90-10 split, project B has an 80-20. We have limited state funds, the 90-10 goes type thing. Tier 4, this is less of a consideration in today's environment. This is the project ready? Obviously, it's kind of intuitive. If you've got 2 competing projects, one's ready, one's not, the one that's ready goes. Regional prioritization and, you know, this may be the chair's point. If two identical projects are both ready to go, which one does the RPC or the TAC or the MPO want to go? Again, in today's funding world, those don't happen very frequently. And then lastly, balancing out year programming. So capacity limits, obviously trying to have the correct distribution. We don't want to do, you know, a ton of paving one year and no bridge work and then flop that the next year. We try to have some level of consistency, long-term strategic goals, right? These are other, I won't say ancillary, but tangential elements to the transportation network that need to be considered for the long-term goals of the agency. And then geographic equity. Again, does Bennington County get the same as Wyndham County, for instance?
So just the long-term strategic goals, is that where economic development would be?
Could be. Yep.
Okay.
And so again, tier 4 and tier 5 are infrequently used in today's funding world. So to go into kind of the state of the program right now, this is generally, again, with current federal funding, where we land roughly $325 million in projects annually. $100 million of that goes to paving. $100 million of that goes to bridges. Of that, $55 million on the interstate, $25 million goes to the state, and then $20 million on town highway programs. We got $40 million for roadway projects, $40 million for traffic and safety, and then $30 million is held in reserve for emergent needs or preservation type work. Just to provide a little bit more definition, $40 million in roadway, that can be significant roadway projects like Pittsford Brandon, as an example this year. It also is things like the Fairleigh Ledge project, any slides, culverts that are not quite bridges, but, you know, are deteriorating. Those all fall in the roadway program. Traffic and safety is everything from line striping, signs, signals, and actual full-blown intersection projects. So those kind of have a wide breadth there.
And this is total dollar, right?
Correct. So that's the general distribution we're shooting for now. Now, with those budget targets, here's where we're at with projects that are in the program. And so you see basically a $55 million target. We're essentially full out to 2035 of projects that are currently in the program.
39.
Well, I mean, yeah, I mean, 35's right, and then 37's a little bit below, but you know, I mean, certainly full out to 50.
So if you were to hit the target, you could add a project if it was too much.
Right, but and again, obviously, as projects develop, the cost changes. These are kind of a snapshot in time, and that's why there is some, you know, ups and downs there.
That million would change over time with inflation or not?
Potentially, but again, depending where we're at with both federal and state funding. This is in 2026 dollars, let's say.
I'm gonna be snarky.
Yes.
Whoa, it's a product.
When we're short of local fund, of state funds, you're gonna tilt towards this because it's 90-10 and you chase the match.
That, and we have federal performance targets that we're required to meet first and foremost.
I understand your federal requirements, but we chase dollars.
Yep, and that was tier 3, I think, of what is the federal max, right? We have an 80-20 project and a 90-10 project. We're short on state
And
funds.
if there's any questions, the interstates are gonna win, and
Yes.
the rest of us all kind of.
You need an interstate.
Yeah, I've got two.
Well,
You're rolling.
you know, I would say you may need an interstate, but I would, I'll use Chittenden County as an example. If I'm in Williston and I work in Essex, the interstate goes right through. And if I'm on Route 2, a majority of the people are driving to work. And if they're driving to Global Foundries, the interstate doesn't mean that much.
Yeah.
I would argue that in most of the state, even those counties that have an interstate that goes through them, the interstate is more likely than not for the people passing through and not for the locals.
Can I add to that? Just because I've been driving 91 a lot these days, and about half of the folks are New Hampshire, which makes sense because that is the interstate for New Hampshire, and I don't believe we get any subsidy from them, right?
No.
So especially when we start talking about bridges and how New Hampshire has all the bridges and
Yeah,
for them,
they won't fix that.
the interstate. Well, it's on the list. It's getting a little bit higher on the list, but no, we're
It's on
happy
New
to wait.
Hampshire's list.
It's on, yeah. So that's an issue.
I don't mean to, but yet I would, and I don't want to not keep up our interstates. But I certainly think that there's more than just the interstates to the world. And all of the formulas and all of the pressure from the federal government leads us to Chase.
Yeah, and I don't disagree, and I'll add another layer there is it's interstates and NHS.
Yep.
So there is
Yep.
a second tier
Yep,
there that.
Yeah, and I think we have to be mindful of that and watch for that.
So again, this is a current snapshot within the Interstate Bridge Program with,
I would just say that, Rutland's trying to, address that.
I saw that, yeah.
Yeah, they have a bill.
Good luck.
I'm not real sure I like that bill.
We haven't had David Weeks in yet.
for the roadway program, again,
I'm
40
sorry to say I'm not in a hurry.
Again, roadway program, even dimmer outlook, $40 million target, and we're overpopulated out past 2043 in the current funding scheme. And then paving, I just picked $100 million based on last year. Again, these projects have a much shorter development period and they have a much faster deterioration curve. So it's much more difficult to have a 10 or 15 year prediction on what's the paving going to do. But even that, you can see out to 2034, the paving program is basically full. Now, there will be some movement within that again, as roads deteriorate, as we do district leveling and we do various treatments. But again, what you'll see is certainly 2034 to 2043, the three main programs are populated to capacity, if not in excess.
Is it just me or has this winter been unusually tough on the roads?
So, yeah, so certainly Ernie had his challenges on that front.
Yeah.
I will say, from my perspective, the most deteriorating thing for the roadway is a freeze-thaw cycle.
Right.
Hmm.
We've had them mostly free, though we've had some.
Right. Now, a deep freeze does cause frost heaves, but
Right.
the worst case scenario is have that deep freeze, then have a thaw, have the water intrusion, then have it refreeze.
Right.
And that's bad for both pavement and bridges.
Right. It seems like there's more heat, but also maybe just because there's more snow, it just makes it more
Yeah.
difficult.
And I think it's been cold, so the frost is probably a little bit deeper this year.
Yeah, it'll be a good month season.
Yeah,
And it's
it'll be a good mud season. Yeah, right.
So that's a little bit of how we prioritize new projects and largely why we're not taking in new projects right now is because we just don't have I won't even say the near future. It's probably for the extent of my career that we're not going to be able to get to what we even have.
How long is that gonna?
We'll see.
How old are you?
No, I mean, seriously, you're talking 10 years?
No, he's
Why?
talking like,
Yeah, well, my career is certainly less than 10 years probably, but yeah, I mean, until 2034 for paving and the roadways 2043.
But it's a lot of projects. We say we're not taking on projects. It's not like we don't have hundreds of, I mean, the book is filled.
Oh, absolutely.
Like-
But I'm saying that's why, like, if a municipality says, hey, we want to fix this intersection,
Yeah.
here's why.
I-
Right?
I would say, you're going to, when we get to the book and we're going through projects, which should be, we're gonna come back a week. We're gonna work on, MBUF stuff and we're gonna, try to clean up a few things that we wanna, that will be our priorities. We'll probably about that time get the T-bill will be coming about that week. We're gonna dive in every day, we're gonna go through section by of the budget. So we're gonna do the budget as quickly as we can. There are going to be questions in here about projects and why my project isn't there. And I think now is the time for you to ask your question and tell him what questions you're going to have when he comes.
Do you want me to talk about the specific project? Because haven't
I
gone
don't
to
want
the
the
town
specific,
yet.
but you, I think.
Yeah, I
from a
have
high level-
concerns. I have
Okay.
serious concerns about a project. One in particular, but now I'm worried that there's others. Where the town has been notified, but, I don't think it's gone to the regional commission. I know it hasn't gone to the regional commission. And the project that I'm most concerned about is, a really important project for, economic development. And its permits are there. I mean, it meets all the criteria.
And so you'll be hearing
Yeah.
from individual members about specific projects that as we go through the book, you're gonna have to answer. And I would encourage anybody here that has those projects, make sure you
Yes.
email, text, or however, get it on his plate so he has the answers when he comes.
Definitely.
Yeah, by all means, if there is a project of concern, we can either talk offline or just give me a little bit of advance warning so I can
Yeah, let's do
have
both.
that.
Yeah.
Or both, yeah.
And I think it would be good to have a list of all of the projects that are being either delayed or canceled.
Well, so no projects are being canceled.
Okay,
We are contemplating that and we're again trying to work out the mechanism and how to do that. That probably won't be this session. Because we haven't even gone to the towns and all the things that Michelle mentioned. I'll just say, and I have a hard time describing this, but projects that are delayed, we need to recognize there's any number of reasons for that. Some of it is certainly financial. Some of it is just a permit got delayed. Some of it is the design took longer, right away took longer, et cetera. And so, absolutely happy to talk about, project A was showing in 2029 and now it's showing in 2030. But I don't want it to be implied or explicit that that's a strictly funding thing. And every project that you.
I think that's why it would be good if you have specifics, if you
Yeah.
can get those to
Yeah.
him ahead of time when we're going through that book. We'll want to cover and, because I'm gonna want to go through this.
Sure.
But, there are concerns about projects that are being delayed.
Understood.
And in this environment, there's a lack of money.
Yes.
So the G report does have a delay. Or year report, like, so if it was in 1 year and you moved it to another fiscal year, is that in the G?
Well, I think the 10G was project delayed because of, I'm not gonna get the wording right. Specific to another project. I forget exactly how it's worded, but it's like if we advance project B instead of A, and there's a direct line there, that's where we report that delay. And that's where, again, this is a term I just learned, zero-based budgeting is kind of what we do, meaning we start from scratch every August. And so it's very difficult to draw a straight line from one project to the next. And just because any number of things can change and, over the course of the year, project estimates, whether real or estimated, will change tens of millions of dollars.
And are the
Yeah.
10G reports in here?
Yes.
Okay. So yeah, that said there's one that projects funded for construction in the prior fiscal year in the program that are no longer funded. So that seems like it would be
That's not canceled.
not canceled, just like delayed. Like we're gonna fund it in FY 27, but we're going to fund it FY 28. That seems like that would be one that would be in one of the.
Well, actually, I think typically that's funded, period. So that would be your category that's completed, generally speaking. Because you no longer have construction funds. I think if I read that correctly, moving it from 27 to 28 is still showing construction funds.
Right, yeah, it just says that are no longer funded. So it
Right.
could be funded for different reasons because they finished it.
Or a different year, right? So long as we're
Right.
showing construction funds still, it would not show up on that 10G report.
This is the first time I've had any interest in the tension.
You know,
I just say last year we were trying to get rid of it.
Yeah.
I know, well, the house I know takes.
You were
great-
trying to get rid of it.
We were trying to.
The house
We
loves
were
10G, but the Senate is.
But-
We just let the House figure it out.
But when you say funded, let's just be clear about that. Isn't that if it's in this step? Doesn't that mean it's funded?
Yes. But the 10G report isn't referencing the SIP, it's referencing the white book.
Okay,
And so construction fund showing in the white book is really what the trigger is, not the STIP.
okay, but this should be in line with it.
In line, but there's gonna be some differences, right? Because we have advanced construction and things like that. So the STIP and the white book won't always match up.
Okay,
It's
so we'll
just
talk.
saying the project's not quite finished. Isn't it?
Or it's saying it has finished, so construction funds no longer,
Well,
you know.
no, but if you show construction funds in 28.
Yep.
Then you're not quite there yet.
right? That'd be the obvious way. Yep.
Yeah.
Right. But it wouldn't show up on a 10G report if construction funds move from 27 to 28,
Right.
because that's still showing construction funds.
Yep.
Are you done?
I am done.
Well, you're pretty good. It's 5 minutes before lunch. I like it.